Our story begins not with a bang, but with a photograph. On October 14, 1962, a U-2 spy plane flying over Cuba captured images of Soviet missile sites under construction. These weren't just any missiles, they were medium-range ballistic missiles capable of striking Washington, D.C. in under 10 minutes. President John F. Kennedy, upon seeing the evidence, formed a secret committee known as XCOM. For days, they debated in hushed tones: blockade, invasion, or airstrike. Each option carried the risk of escalation. But what if, on October 22nd, when Kennedy announced the blockade to the world, the Soviets had called his bluff? Kennedy's televised address drew a line in the sand. Soviet ships carrying more missiles were steaming toward the blockade line. On October 24th, the world watched as Soviet vessels approached U.S. Navy ships. According to declassified tapes, U.S. commanders were authorized to use force if necessary. Imagine if one Soviet captain, under orders from Moscow, refused to stop. A U.S. destroyer fires a warning shot. Ignored. Then, a direct hit. The ship sinks. Soviet sailors perish. In our timeline, Khrushchev ordered his ships to halt, but in this alternate reality, he sees it as an act of war. Within hours, Soviet forces in Cuba are put on high alert. Tensions escalate. On October 27th, a U-2 spy plane is shot down over Cuba, killing pilot Major Rudolph Anderson. In reality, this nearly triggered a U.S. airstrike. Here, it does. Kennedy, under pressure from Hawks and his administration, authorizes a limited strike on the missile sites. But intelligence is flawed. Soviet forces are more prepared than expected. As U.S. bombers approach, Soviet SAM sites open fire. One bomber is hit, crashing into a Soviet installation. On the ground, Soviet commanders, fearing an invasion, make a fateful decision. They launch their operational missiles at targets in the southeastern United States. The first missiles strike within minutes. Miami, Tampa, and Homestead Air Force Base are hit by 1-megaton warheads. Fireballs engulf cities, followed by shockwaves that level buildings for miles. Casualties are in the hundreds of thousands. In Washington, D.C., early warning systems detect incoming warheads. The president is rushed to a bunker, but the Capitol is not spared. The White House, Capitol, and Pentagon are vaporized. Panic spreads as radio broadcasts are interrupted by emergency alerts. This is not a drill. Nuclear war has begun. In the Underground Command Center, surviving U.S. officials activate the Single Integrated Operational Plan, or SIOP, the full-scale nuclear retaliation plan. Within 30 minutes, hundreds of ICBMs launch from silos across the American heartland. Submarines in the Atlantic and Pacific fire their missiles. Targets include Soviet cities, military bases, and industrial centers. Moscow, Leningrad, and Kiev are struck by multiple warheads. The Soviet Union responds in kind, launching its own arsenal at NATO allies in Europe and remaining U.S. targets. In less than an hour, over 3,000 nuclear weapons are exchanged. The immediate death toll is catastrophic. An estimated 200 million people perish in the first 24 hours from blast effects, heat, and radiation. Major cities like New York, Los Angeles, London, and Paris are reduced to radioactive rubble. Survivors in fallout zones suffer from acute radiation sickness, vomiting, hair loss, and internal bleeding. Hospitals are overwhelmed or destroyed. Communication networks collapse. Governments fragment as leaders are killed or isolated. The world plunges into chaos, with no central authority to coordinate relief. But the horror doesn't end there. The nuclear explosions ignite firestorms in cities and forests, pumping billions of tons of soot and ash into the stratosphere. Within weeks, this debris spreads globally, blocking sunlight. Temperatures plummet by an average of 10 degrees Celsius. This is nuclear winter. Crops fail worldwide as growing seasons are shortened. Photosynthesis nearly stops. Food supplies dwindle, leading to mass starvation. The ecological collapse is profound. Ozone depletion from the blasts allows harmful UV radiation to reach the surface, causing skin cancers and blinding animals. Acid rain contaminates water sources. Radiation lingers for decades, causing long-term health issues like cancer and birth defects. By 1970, the global population has dropped from 3.1 billion to under 1 billion. Civilization as we know it ends. Survivors band into small, isolated communities, reverting to pre-industrial lifestyles to scavenge what remains. Some regions fare better than others. Areas in the southern hemisphere, like Australia and parts of South America, experience less severe nuclear winter due to wind patterns. But even there, global trade has ceased. Technology regresses as manufacturing and knowledge networks are destroyed. The few remaining governments, like in Switzerland or New Zealand, struggle to maintain order. The Cold War is over, but at the cost of modern society. No internet, no space race, no globalization, just a fight for survival. Decades pass. By the year 2000, some recovery occurs, but it's slow. Agriculture gradually adapts to the cooler climate, but yields are low. Science is set back centuries. Researchers focus on practical survival skills rather than theoretical advances. Political systems are localized, with no United Nations or international cooperation. Conflicts over scarce resources, like clean water and arable land, are common. The world is a patchwork of feudal states, with little memory of the pre-war era beyond oral histories. Compare this to our reality. In our timeline, the Cuban Missile Crisis ended with a secret deal. The US removed missiles from Turkey, and the Soviets withdrew from Cuba. It led to arms control treaties, and eventually the end of the Cold War. We saw the moon landing, the rise of the internet, and global connectivity. In the alternate timeline, none of that happens. Human progress is stunted, perhaps permanently. This underscores how close we came. Declassified documents show that on October 27, 1962, a Soviet submarine nearly launched a nuclear torpedo after being depth-charged by US forces, prevented only by one officer's refusal. So, what if the Cuban Missile Crisis went hot? It would have been an extinction-level event for modern civilization. Not just a war, but a cascade of disasters: nuclear exchange, immediate mass death, nuclear winter, famine, and societal collapse. The world would be unrecognizable today, a shadow of its potential. This isn't just speculation, it's a warning from history. Those 13 days in October 1962 were a razor's edge between peace and oblivion, and we are here only because of luck, restraint, and the courage of individuals who chose diplomacy over destruction.